Now, in the political classes where I spent my professional life, when you embarrass the president or the senator or the congressman, there is a kind of divorce that takes place. You are cut off. You are persona non grata. And that is fully what I expected and deserved for what I had done. That very day, I wrote a letter to George W. Bush, and I resigned my position at the White House, and I left the White House in total and utter disgrace. It was as if I had opened up the double doors and descended down not into the cellar, but into the sub-cellar. A hypocrite. God had blessed me with 25 years of incredible interns who were of your generation. And by the way, you are an incredible generation. I let them down very badly. I embarrassed the president, my White House colleagues, not to mention my beloved wife and boys, my parents and everybody who had ever believed in me, trusted in me, confided in me. I was a hypocrite. And when I came in on Monday after the Friday of my resignation to begin taking the pictures off the walls and cleaning out my desk, I received a call, which is the call that no one wants to receive. I went over to see our chief of staff, and he said the words in the White House that as a staffer you never want to hear. They are the following: the boss would like to see you. Now, in White House parlance, if it's good news, the president wants to see you. And if it's bad news, it's the boss. And I was ready for my much anticipated and deserved woodshed moment. So I went to the Oval Office, and it was just the president and me. Anybody here like Bugs Bunny? I do. I love Looney Tunes. When Bugs Bunny is ever in a castle and he shuts the door, there's this, When I shut the door of the Oval Office, it seemed to be an echo that I just knew that the worst was coming. And I turned to George W. Bush, and I looked him squarely in the eyes, and I said, Mr. President, I owe you, and before I could get the words out, he looked at me squarely in the eyes, and he said, Tim, I forgive you. Now, I have to tell you, I've lived on the planet for 48 years. That was one of the most surreal moments of my life. I actually wanted to clear out my ear and essentially ask him to repeat himself. And so for the second time, I said, Mr. President, and before I could get my apology out, he said to me, Tim, grace and mercy are real. I'm extending them to you. You're forgiven. And I was shocked. And I said, Mr. President, you should have taken me by the lapels and tossed me into Pennsylvania Avenue for what I had done. And I expected a rejoinder or a retort, and he said to me, Tim, I'm going to say it again. You are forgiven. Grace and mercy are real. I've known them in my life, and I'm extending them to you. You're forgiven. He said, now we can talk about all this for the next 20 or 30 minutes, or we can talk about the last 8 years. And so I walked over to sit on one of the two couches in the Oval Office. He said, no. He said, sit over here. And he directed me toward the chair, the place of honor, below the famous portrait of George Washington, where either the vice president or a visiting head of state sits when they come to see the president. We spoke together. We prayed together. We embraced, and I thought, this is the last time I will ever see George W. Bush. And as I was leaving, he said, oh, and by the way, I want you to bring your wife and children here so that I can tell them what a wonderful husband and father you've been. Let me just tell you all, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, a liberal or a conservative, or none of the above, or all of the above, depending on the day or time of week, That's not how presidents act. And sure enough, my wife and children were invited to come to the Oval Office. He gave them gifts, hugs all around, kept his promise, and George W. Bush and I have become friends. Now, it's very tempting for me to stand at a podium in an election year of all things and to make grandiose statements about this relationship between politics and our faith. And I can tell you that this is the greatest country in the history of man without peer, and that as Christians living in America, every day is Thanksgiving Day. Yesterday was D-Day, and you all know what an extraordinary day that is for our country. But I can tell you that for all the theoretical and philosophical discussions about faith and politics, for me, at the very nadir and the lowest point of my life, I was extended a grace and a mercy and a love and a forgiveness that could have only come from Jesus Christ. So the takeaway is singular. That Proverbs is right, that pride does go before the fall, and it does. And so as I say, if you have forgotten already everything I've said, and that's perfectly fine, I hope if there's even one person in this room today who is prideful by nature, that you will make a commitment between you and God before the sun sets, that you will toss pride out on its ear before the close of this day. But I want to say something proactive and something far more important. Humility is endless. And those three words, I think, are the most beautiful, sequential three words in the English language. They were written by my favorite poet, T.S. Eliot. Humility is endless. Humility, in my view, is the seedbed of true greatness. And in the Christian life, it is the seedbed of our obedience to God Himself and love and service to other people. It's very tempting in a cerebral room like this, where there are Dante and Augustine and Shakespeare and Milton, and the list is endless. All these ideas bouncing off the walls in this continual conversation that goes on, which I think is so great. It's tempting for me to leave you all by saying intellect is really preeminent, but it is not. I hope there are lots of straight-A students here who have aced SATs and all the other acronyms and are serving and doing great things because of your intellect. That's great. And I honor that, truly. But I have learned that in the real world, it's run by B and C students. And that at the end of the day, that it is character and integrity before intellect. That character and integrity are preeminent, and that everything else follows therefrom.